Hi, and welcome to another edition of Better Minneapolis. Today I'm interviewing Nguyen, who is running for Hennepin County Attorney. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks, Terry, and it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invitation.
Great. So I thought we would start today if you could just maybe give people a little bit of your background and why you chose to run for this particular office.
Great. Well, Terry, just a little bit about myself. So I'm 43 now, but when I came to this country, I was about 9 years old. I'm Vietnamese. I was raised in Vietnam. I'm actually half Chinese and half Vietnamese, but our family fought with the Americans in the Vietnam War. And as you know, and many others know, that war ended with America leaving. And for us South Vietnamese who fought with the Americans who were on the side of democracy, things of that nature, we really didn't have a country left. And so many of my family members were put into re-education camps, which sadly, to be really frank with you, were death camps. Mm-hmm. And so my single mother, along with my two older brothers, took us three boys, and we tried to flee Vietnam actually several times. And for us, we were unsuccessful all three times, but for the grace of God, on our fourth time, we were able to get out of the country. My eldest brother is actually the son of an American soldier, but he left with the helicopters and all of that, and sort of the calamity of the end of the war. It was we don't know who he is. But for us, we ended up in the refugee camps in the Philippine Islands. I was one of those kids that wore the losing Super Bowl T-shirt because those got to go somewhere, and then they print out all those T-shirts. From the age of 7 to 9, I was in the Bantan refugee camps in the Philippine Islands, and there we did what you would think. It was Red Cross, it was rations, it was food, it was living in tight quarters, it was rafters for housing and things of that nature. I truly do believe this. I believe by the grace of God, we came to the best country in the entire world. Catholic Charities sponsored my family to come to America. That's how we got here. A lot of Vietnamese at the time were going to London, Australia, whatever countries would open their arms to Vietnamese refugees. And then for us, we were so fortunate to be able to come to America. So a little parish by the name of St. Anthony's Catholic Parish in St. Cloud, Minnesota, sponsored our family, my single mom and my two brothers and I, to come. So if you can imagine this, we left the equator and we showed up in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
So it was quite a shock, but it was. I think I won the lottery the day that we were sponsored, and I mean that, and I still feel that today. So
did you end up going to high school in St. Cloud area, or?
Yeah, all of that. So when we came, and I think this is sort of the power of education and sort of the power of the American dream, to be really frank with you. When we came, I got to start first grade. I was actually, as we were fleeing and all of that, I actually should have been in third grade, but there's no school when you're running from communist regimes and things of that nature. So I wasn't in school for the times we were in the camps. And so when we came over, lucky for me, I was able to restart way back to first grade. So I got to start my American education, right? And my two eldest brothers went right to high school, senior year, and they were out just like that.
Wow, that had to be hard, because I'm imagining they probably didn't speak English.
Right.
So,
none of us did.
Yeah.
We were all starting from zero, but grateful to be here. And so for me, I learned English in a basement at Roosevelt Elementary School, which is no longer there, sadly. But if you ever think that magic doesn't exist, I would urge you to talk to English as a second language teachers, or any teacher for that fact, to be really frank with you. Now it's English as a learned language because many people come here with many languages. But Mary Lou Martins, really wonderful lady, taught me and about 9 other students. We all spoke different languages, Spanish, Vietnamese, Lao, other things. And by the end of the year, we all spoke one language, and we could communicate, and we could articulate, and we could learn. And that language was English. So this voice that you hear, this sort of cadence and this timbre and the way I'm speaking, all is because of that angel, that woman.
That teacher.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. it gave me the groundwork of becoming who I am today. Yeah, so it's been quite a journey.
So I want to come back to that because obviously what's going on in our state right now is deeply related to that. But could you speak a little bit more about sort of where you went to college and when you got your degree and sort of why, just a little bit. I know you're currently a prosecutor and just, kind of filling in more of those details and why now is a good time for you to run for this office.
Sure. And thanks for that question. So, for me, I'm a child of public assistance. So I grew up on food stamps. Back when we actually had the actual fake money, where you had to stand in line at the register and pull it open. Yeah,
the booklet.
Yeah, now it's the EBT cards and things of that nature. But I'll never forget one of the most humbling experiences. So we come from a country of a barter system. So the price for this microphone might be $15. But it's not $15. Could be $13. Could be $11. And that's because we go to every day you wake up in Vietnam, you go to the open market. And you're negotiating what the price of fish would be or whatever you're buying. So we're in the Walmart line. We're here. My mom then says to me, "Mày nói thằng này tao là mua cho 8 đồng nha, không phải 10 đồng." Which basically says, you tell this man I'm going to buy this thing for $8 and not 10.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's just not how things work, but that's how culturally things have worked, right? For us before we got to America. So I would, reluctantly tell my mom, no, please don't. Let's do it's $10. She's like, you tell him. So, this young Hao is embarrassed, and then the Walmart light starts flicking, and then more people start lining up, and then pretty soon I say, hey, my mom would only like to pay $8 for this toaster. And you have this poor young guy who's in college working, and he's like, I can't do that, man. Yeah. So those growing pains and those things have really taught me a lot about the value of money, about the ability to use the assistance that America gave us, right? So I have this deep sense of responsibility. And I think a lot of us do have this deep sense of responsibility to give back to a country that has given us so much, right? I'm sitting before you today, a prior police officer, right? And a current prosecutor licensed attorney who has a law degree, an undergraduate degree, and a K through 12 education. This country gave me all of that. And I have this deep sense of responsibility to be sort of the fruits of America's labor, right? America gave me food stamps, I put it into my body, I grew. America gave me education, I took that, I put it into my mind, and I expanded it, and I wanted to give back. So for me, there's always been this deep sense of purpose and calling to give to the community and to do public service with everything that I've ever been given. And it's a responsibility that I could close my eyes and I could find it like the lamp that's in my bedroom. It's that familiar to me, and it means that much to me.
So I'm guessing is this the first election you've run in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've never ran in any election before.
And do you consider yourself DFL, or you're going for the the endorsement kind of thing? Yep.
Yeah, but thanks for that question. I'm a Democrat. I've always voted Democrat. I'm a DFLer, and I'm certainly seeking the endorsement. But back to sort of the coming of age story. Growing up, I saw police officers, in St. Cloud. I saw the good work that those men and women did. I also, after graduating college, I thought, what best way can you serve the community, right? And it was then and there I thought the best way I can serve is to go and help people in their most time of need. So when that 911 call comes out, the automatic situation is you respond and you go. So I got my citizenship, I pledged to the allegiance, I swore under the Constitution, and I was very lucky to be able to become a police officer at the Stearns County Sheriff's Department as well as the St. Cloud Police Department. And actually, while I was going through college, I put myself through college at St. Cloud State working overnights as a correctional officer in the jails. By the way, that's a really good way to stay out of trouble if you're working in the jails overnight and going to college during the day.
Yeah.
It's an excellent, I recommend it for everybody who wants to just keep their nose at the grindstone.
So I would think that having been like a former officer and a corrections officer, that it's kind of given you a lot of insight into the lives of people who have, been incarcerated, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely. So, for me, I've always thought this. We're people. We wake up every day, and then there's certain things that happen to us. Some of them we choose, and some of them we don't.
Mm-hmm.
No matter who's at the other side of this table, whether they're a suspect or a defendant or a witness or a victim, I want to treat them with dignity and care. One of the things that taught me most when I was a correctional officer is that every single person is someone's brother, sister, mother, father. Some of them have done terrible things, and they're there because they need to atone for those and to be held responsible for those and to pay their debt to society, but they're still human beings.
Yeah.
So as a young man, 18 to 21 or so, those are formidable years to be working in a jail with people who are spread across their lifetimes, right? Who are incarcerated. You get to know them, you get to learn about them, but also you get to know about your colleagues, the men and women who also wear the uniform, and understand what they're going through. So that was one of the best learnings that I've ever had in my life, other than the refugee immigrant experience as well.
So several other candidates are in the race, and some of them are really looking to, change the way prosecutions are done or the attorney's office is set up. I guess some are probably running in reaction to how Moriarty has done the job. What is, how Nguyen's reason for getting into this race? Like, what are your top, say, 3 priorities if you're elected?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. So, for me, I'm first and foremost, my current position right now, I've been a prosecutor for 15 years. And I've done homicide cases, rape cases, aggravated assault cases, auto thefts, everything you can think of in between. And I think experience is just really critical, to be really candid with you. From the bottom of my heart, I think experience right now to do the job and know how to do the job is so important.
So you've actually been in the courtroom and presented the evidence and all those sort of things?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I started out in my first 5 years doing misdemeanor domestic assaults, DWIs, loud parties, threats of violence, disorderly conduct. And then after I was able to try as many cases as I could, 15 to 20 cases at a low level, I worked really, really, really hard to come down to the cities and become a prosecutor here, dealing with major felonies. And and that involved Ramsey County Attorney's Office, or our capital city, which is the second largest county attorney's office in the state. And there, my work was to become the best prosecutor I can. Learn how to get evidence in, learn how to get witnesses on the stand, learn how to effectively cross-examine a defendant, things of that nature, right? And so there I dealt with cases of sexual assault, violent crime, murder cases, grand jury cases. And by the way, in Minnesota, the only way we can achieve life without the chance for parole, et cetera, and some other very high-level cases, the sexual assault cases, is a grand jury and paneling a grand jury to get indictment and then ultimately trying the case. But for me...
So just to clarify, did you play a role, or do you maybe currently play a role in deciding who gets prosecuted and who doesn't, and who pleads out, that sort of thing? Or
Right, yeah. So when I first started out, that was my job, just being a trial attorney, learning how to do those cases, right? What does it look like, right? Being in the courtroom. And then eventually I was able to be promoted to assistant director, and then ultimately I'm now our director of the Ramsey County Attorney's Office Trials Division and our appellate division. So I supervise our largest criminal trial function as well as our appellate function. And a part of my job also is I evaluate all of the officer-involved shootings that happen in Ramsey County.
Wow. Okay.
So every single time a police officer or peace officer uses deadly force in Ramsey County, whether that results in the killing of an individual or the firing of a weapon or what have you, where there's no death, the BCA, as you understand, descends upon the scene. They take over the scene, they do the investigation, and I am the person that gets that call in the middle of the night. and it almost always seems like it's in the middle of the night. And I'm the person that gets that first information, and then ultimately after that investigation, right, is completed, I'm the person that they contact to bring to me so I can evaluate it, right? And then me and my team look through that evidence, and it's a tight group, small group. It's me and one other, right? And we look at that and we take our time, we're careful with the facts, we're careful with the law, and we decide ultimately if we're going to prosecute or not, or make a recommendation to the county attorney of whether or not we should prosecute. And if we don't, we issue a memorandum that is somewhere between 35 and sometimes 60 pages, detailing exactly every single piece of fact and evidence compared to the law with an analysis that tells the public and the police officer and the subject's family, anybody has access to this. You can Google it. It has my signature on it that says why we declined and why force was justified. Now, I take that responsibility very seriously. I've handled, I think, the last 3 or 4 years, every single officer-involved shooting case that's been going on in Ramsey County. So countless cases. And I just think it's such a grave responsibility, right, to do that. And so it's one of my functions as well. I supervise all of our trial attorneys. And then I also think about what happens down the road to cases, if we're going to appeal a judge's decision or not, or a conviction, or a decision made that would impact the integrity of a conviction.
Okay. And did I read that I think that's 300 people that you're supervise?
Right.
Is that right?
Right. So our office has about 300 people.
Okay.
Right? And so I am in an office that oversees 300 people. I supervise directly our largest criminal function, so about 60 or so attorneys, and all the support staff you can imagine, paralegals, legal secretaries, law enforcement investigators, things of that nature that are assigned to our office, as well as law clerks and everyone else. And I have the support of other directors that help me do that.
And maybe I should know this. I don't know how big Hennepin County is compared to Ramsey. I think it's probably a little bit bigger.
Oh, for sure. So Hennepin County, I think it's the numbers are a little different, but we can say it's roughly double.
Okay.
Or so, right?
Yeah.
But not the reason back to why I'm running is because there needs to be experience.
Okay.
Right? Somebody who knows what really probable cause is, right? And what the burden beyond a reasonable doubt would be. And what a traffic stop looks like in terms of reasonable articulable suspicion. How to do the case, the nuts and bolts of that. But also then somebody who understands how to supervise a county attorney's office. You are responsible for hardworking people, attorneys, public servants, who really care about getting justice. You need to know how to do their job.
Yeah.
You need to know how to supervise them too. You need to know how to support them in times of need, and you need to know how to be able to communicate with them in times of, well, maybe we're doing this, we're taking this direction, and here's why. So one of the things that I think is lacking is the experienced leadership and the know-how. And over 15 years of prosecution work, coupled with the law enforcement work that I've done. So if you really think about this, Terry, I know what it's like to be the person walking up to the car as a police officer, or the person responding to the 911 phone call that ultimately ends up in an apartment where there's hectic scenes, someone's getting arrested, witness statements are taken. I know all of that, all the way through the process of prosecution to the next process of the appeals work, because once the prosecution is done, there's still appeals to deal with. And then I know the end process of incarceration. So for me, the entire level of criminal justice I've done. And I would argue that one of the most important things also is the lived experiences that I bring to the table. Coming to this country with nothing, but having a great appreciation for what the refugee experience is, what the person of color experience is, but having a tremendous amount of respect for the law.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah. I want to ask, if I could, a few kind of specific issues that you'd have to deal with that are out there now that I think are directly related to a few of the things you said there. One is, say, like, Moriarty has just started this policy of she's not going to prosecute sort of felonies based on, say, low-level traffic stops and
Right.
things like that.
Right.
These are more kind of and her push has really been about basing things on statistics. And so she would say that statistically, those felonies are such a small part of the work, this is not worth our time to try and prosecute. So where would you stand on something like that? Do you have a kind of a philosophy that you would bring to the table that, like, it is based on statistics, or is it just based on lived experience, or how would you sort of address this particular issue, but then what's your overarching philosophy that kind of backs that up?
Right. So I think that's a great question. So first and foremost, I want to say I've been endorsed by Hennepin County Sheriff DeWanna Witt, which I'm just humbled by her endorsement. She's a true leader, and I think she's one of the best police officers I've ever met. And looking at the work that the chief is doing in Minneapolis, law enforcement more than ever is trying to do right by people, trying to do good work. When we look at the Constitution and we think about what reasonable article of suspicion is, the U.S. Supreme Court says that it is completely legal to pull someone over for a headlight, right? And if law enforcement does that, so there's this particular type of case law that says you can stop someone for as long as you have reasonable article of suspicion for a traffic violation, right? And once you get up there, though, if you see or smell or see other fruits of crime, there's what we call the scope can be expanded. The Constitution allows scopes because the law doesn't make officers close their eyes to crime, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that law enforcement has a public safety interest in stopping speeders, in stopping people with broken headlights, because those ultimately can end up with traffic violations, death, car crashes, things of that nature. If they go and then they see other crime, it's perfectly legal for them to investigate that. Now, I think that we should think about cases on a case-by-case basis. There are plenty of officers in my life, and I've been one of them, who call me up and say, hey, that traffic stop that I did? And I'm like, yeah, what's up? Hey, that was a good stop. And I'm like, yeah, I looked at the video, I saw the thing. Yeah, but I want to give that person a break. I don't think they should have had that ticket. And so we have that conversation. Or I take a look at a case and I think, okay, well, that's a valid traffic stop. But ultimately we found someone with one single bullet that's in the trunk of their car. And there's a law that says, people shouldn't have bullets if they're ineligible to possess bullets. But it was clearly wedged underneath the tire. It's just, it's maybe not even their car. So we have those discussions with law enforcement. It's very rare to meet a public servant when the facts are appropriate, where they just want to hammer people. I've just not found that to be the case. And so with regard to policies like that, Hennepin is massive. There's so many officers, right? There's so many police chiefs. And I think one of the things that's lacking right now is the communication with law enforcement, right? We as prosecutors don't carry the baton for law enforcement. We ultimately can prosecute law enforcement if the case arises, right? And we've seen that before. So it's not like we necessarily are, they bring it to us and then we just do whatever they say. There's a reason for the separation of powers in that sense, and there's a reason why there's attorneys and law enforcement. But that being said, it is a symbiotic relationship that makes a lot of sense. Law enforcement should be able to call the county attorney's office and say, hey, I've got this thing that's going on with the victim. For example, I've had a case where I took one where it's the elderly parent was in a nursing home. They ended up visiting with their kids, and it turned out that they all of a sudden owned a yacht or something like that in Florida. And then they bought a Rolex out of Oshkosh. Well, no, their loved one has just been in a nursing home the entire time. Well, it's like, oh yeah, this person visits me, or I got this email, and I said it's all okay. Well, there's diminished capacity there. right? And who's coming to visit you, and who's this person, right? So the officer wants to write a warrant. They want to write a warrant for the accounts. They want to search emails. They want to look at text messages, right? And all of this so we can find out if this person is being nefarious or not and taking advantage of somebody. Now, is that a violent crime? Is that a aggravated robbery? No, but it is hurting someone, and it's taking advantage of someone. Without that conversation from law enforcement to me about should we do this, can we do this, do you think I have enough probable cause, do you think a judge is going to sign this warrant, then they don't call. And then at the end of the day, they don't write that warrant. And someone's suffering at the end of that. A victim suffering at the end of that. Someone is going to distrust law enforcement or the prosecutor's office at the end of that because, well, how come you're not doing anything for my grandmother or my mother, right? That symbiotic relationship is important. Does that make sense?
It does, but, kind of the follow-up I have to that is it sounds like you're saying, you're more inclined to make a case-by-case judgment on the circumstances when deciding whether or not to prosecute, right?
Which is what most prosecutors' offices do right now.
Yeah.
And that's really our job to decide that. So one of the best things about being a prosecutor, it's the same thing about being a police officer, by the way. When you first get your police officer's license, right? It says how, when, and it says peace officer. It doesn't say trooper, it doesn't say sheriff, it doesn't say police, right? It says peace. And I looked at those words for a long time, and I truly believe that words matter, they mean something. It's our job to keep the peace, to make sure that people are safe and can go home, to make sure that we can go home, etc., right? To make sure victims aren't taken advantage of, right? Also, when you get your license as an attorney, it has the barcode and everything, and all attorneys get that as their license card. But when you swear under oath to be a prosecutor, there's a tenet that talks about minister of justice. The ministry of justice, that's a special type of attorney, right? And I'm not dogging my civil attorneys or my contract attorneys or anything like that, but the ministry of justice means, is it justice to prosecute right now? Is it justice to not prosecute? So we take those things very seriously. We take the statutes that the legislators make on behalf of the citizenry. Those need to be enforced, right? We take a look at the victims as well, right? There's victims' rights statutes. We also think about the defendant as a person and not necessarily just as a defendant. So the ministry of justice is a very strong calling for prosecutors. And it's not an easy job to do, because if you're really trying to think of what is the most right thing to do, while also thinking about public safety, working with law enforcement, thinking about victims, thinking about the defendant, thinking about statutes as a whole, you really want to do the very best you can. So it's not just, there's enough facts, let's charge, let's prosecute, and let's do that. I think there's more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're giving us a window into how complicated, really, each of these cases are, and the many factors involved. There was a couple of things you mentioned there that made me think about. One, this concept of that seems to be kind of gaining some traction and interest is restorative justice. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on is that something that needs to be incorporated more? And then also there's a great concern about youth crime.
Right.
And so I'd like to hear your take on that and if there's anything that needs to be done differently there.
Yeah. Well, so first and foremost, I'm a father. I've got kids, and I would never want them to commit a crime, and I would never want them to be victims of crime. And I know that we have a lot of hardworking parents in this county who every day just hope that their kids have the best opportunity that they can. Now, is it our job as prosecutors to hammer kids so hard that they never are able to get a student loan again, never able to apply for college, can't go on to become police officers, teachers, public servants, anything of that nature, right? No, I think the answer is no. But is it our job as prosecutors to look at public safety and to say, okay, this teenager, right, 17, almost 18, there's a certification process. Did they commit a murder? Have they committed an aggravated robbery? Have they done something to someone where it's been planned, thought about, and then afterwards the evidence has been, tried to be hidden, or have they evaded? I mean, some of those things require responsibility. Mm-hmm. They just absolutely do. And what I know about most crime, because my whole life has been about that, is that almost every single person comes back to our society. So while we're holding people accountable, we need to treat them with dignity and respect. We also need to talk to their parents. We also need to talk about their systems of support, because they're coming back. Now, not every single juvenile needs to go to jail or prison. But again, it's on a case-by-case basis. It's very important that we don't just let the stats and we don't just let the theory of something about get in the way of holding those accountable, right? I mean, we allow 18-year-olds to go and get loans that are massive for school and never be able to get out of their debt. We allow them to go fight for our country and they give up a lot of things. We allow for young people to do a lot of things in this country that could change their whole life. There are cases that I've handled where I've seen teenagers plan things out that are really hurtful and painful, and ultimately someone's dead at the end of it. For me, I'm not trying to say this to be just harsh, but there's a victim still on the other end of that.
Right.
And a family and a community that expects answers, right? And so I'm never going to not look at those hard decisions and still hold people accountable. That doesn't mean I'm not going to look at the sentence. It doesn't mean I'm going to treat them, as pure, darkness or evil. But there is accountability. And on the other side of that, Terry, I just have to be really frank. We owe it to the person themselves as well, right? I've prosecuted cases before where people later on come out of incarceration and say to me, "You saved my life." Because the next case, I think I would have died. In my work, a perpetrator one day, a victim the next. It can change very quickly, right? And so there's a part of that we need to think about as well in terms of keeping the defendant safe.
Yeah.
Right? So it's I'm not trying to be dodgy with my answer, but it is not just they're 14 and 16, so no, we're not charging them, right? And they're 16 to 17, and if there are these crimes, then we are. It's very fact specific. It's very support specific, like who's in their lives. What ability can we help them? Are there people who want to help them? Are there services we can connect them to? But at the end of the day, if you've committed murder, or if you were sexually assaulting someone, or if you committed a violent crime, all of those things I want to supply for you and help you, but you still need to be held responsible, which means a conviction, a plea, or a trial, and it does mean incarceration.
So along those lines, I want to kind of talk about the relationship that your office would have with the police, because I think right now there's been some tension, if you will, between the offices where, the police feel like they'll arrest someone, hand them over to the prosecutor who doesn't prosecute. And so my question is sort of, how do you plan to build that relationship with the different police in Hennepin County? Because I read there's, I think, 39 different, and maybe I've got it short, but I mean, when you mention the sheriff's office of St. Cloud, all these municipalities all have their own police forces with their own sort of attitudes, if you will. So what do you think your office can do to improve relations with all those different, and maybe you do it now, I'm not sure, in your current position, but it seems like that's a big part of this job is building those bridges with all those different places. So maybe you could speak to that a bit.
Yeah. So right now, in my phone.
Okay.
Every single police chief, many officers, investigators have my phone number in Ramsey County. And I pick up this phone day or night. Day or night. I've had this same phone number. I give them I've had the same phone number since I was like in 11th grade.
Mm-hmm.
They need access to the county attorney's office. They need to be able to ask what's going on or ask for help or explain what's going on. Sometimes it's the opposite. It's like, hey, here's something I've learned that can compromise this, and I want to tell you about it so you can do the right thing. It's a two-way street. And I think for me is that communication that I have built and that trust, and it's not always doing what officers want me to do. We had a case where where I had to sit down with a lieutenant, and I think total it was almost 8 hours of conversation spread out between 3 days about why we were moving in a different direction than the officer wanted, and the chief and the department. But ultimately, till this day, I get lunch with that officer, that lieutenant. There's mutual respect there because of the time invested, the ability to speak and articulate. You and I might never agree on something, but if I don't shut you out and I can articulate myself and you can do the same, then at least there's some respect to each other's function. So for me, I'm a bridge builder. Mm-hmm. I don't lead with ego. There's no way that ego has any place in public service. Zero. You could be the smartest person in the room. You could have the most power and authority. But how our system works, and that's why it's a great system, is that you need to work with others to get the job done. County commissioners, police chiefs, police officers, judges, the defense bar, right? Because the defense bar is doing something too. They're also protecting the Constitution and looking out what can be best for their client. So all of these parties have a say. And then the other party that we really should never forget about is the community. Mm-hmm. How are they feeling? What's going on right now? Is this decision completely disregarding what the culture and the climate of the community is? Right? And also, I think one mistake that most prosecutors do is thinking that we know better for communities, thinking that we can make decisions for communities. I had a mother in North Minneapolis. I'm endorsed by Mothers Against Gun Violence out of North Minneapolis, right? I had a mother in North Minneapolis tell me, how if truly we're all supposed to be equal and all of our lives, right, matter, then I don't want people thinking for us or what's best for us, right? If a young child in, let's say, an affluent neighborhood gets shot and killed, they didn't believe that the prosecutor or law enforcement is going to be standing up there saying, hey, this and this and this, that's why we're dismissing this case, or this and this and this, that's why they're going to get probation. No. They anticipate that that child's life in that affluent neighborhood is going to get a proper prosecution and the person's going to be held accountable, period. Mm-hmm. They want the same for their community. They were telling me, if my kid gets killed crossing the street or gets shot or whatever, I want that person prosecuted and held responsible just like the other child's life in that other community. And I think that that's really important to keep thinking about.
Yeah.
Right? We shouldn't say, well, that group over there and that group over here, well, I know about this group, or I think I know, so I'll just make sweeping policy decisions. That's not true. Right? We got to talk to people, and some of those conversations are tough. Mm-hmm. Right?
Along those lines, and you mentioned kind of about taking in the feedback of victims. I mean, you mentioned being cognizant of how the community is feeling, but what are your thoughts on the concept of restorative justice, whereby the victim statements and things are taken into account with setting punishments, or even having the victim speak with the person who committed the crime? I mean, I'm not totally familiar on all the aspects of it, but it seems to be kind of a topic I hear more and more about.
Sure. So. Restorative justice is a process that requires participation and agreement by all parties, right? And it's something that absolutely can work. And is able to work, but not in every single case and not for every single offense or person, right? You have to have a victim who wants to cooperate with that. and they have a right to say no.
Yeah.
They have a right, we have a victim statute that says they have input into decisions and to voice their inputs to the court, even when they're in disagreement with the state or the prosecutor. The defendant, by the way, also has to agree that they want to participate in this, right? Because oftentimes, defendants might not want to participate. They might just say, I want to exercise my right to a trial and due process and give me my trial, prove me guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And if I get convicted, then I'll deal with probation and incarceration and all that. So, restorative justice is a great tool. It just requires all the keys at the same time to turn and for everyone to be on board. So I don't want to just say, no, that's a horrible idea. No, it's not. But it's an idea and a tool that only can be used when all parties are on board and game for it, right?
Okay.
And by the way, when it works, man, it's really great. I've seen amazing things. Like, the power of humanity is just so beautiful. I've seen victims forgive their perpetrator in open court, even after they've had to testify and the conviction, right? I mean, for that victim, they get to go on with their lives.
Yeah.
But and they have a right to choose, right? There's some others who will never forgive, and they don't have to forgive, right? And maybe that's how they move on with their lives, right? So there's just wonderful things that human beings are capable of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds very powerful to witness. So there's a lot of controversial things, I guess, that have come up with this Hennepin County job. I mean, I feel like every attorney has faced one crisis or another, whether it's a police officer getting shot or shooting someone, or it's hard to predict. Something, I guarantee you, is going to happen while you're in office, if you're elected, that's going to be controversial. So I'm just wondering if you've ever had to deal with that sort of pressure, whether, like, maybe in your current role where, you've been thrown sort of a wild card that you had to manage.
Sure. I would say that all of the officer-involved shootings that I handle are that.
Yeah.
We had a very high-profile officer-involved shooting in Ramsey County a couple years ago that involved the killing of an elder of a minority status, and there are things that the community were demanding, that they felt that they had a right to demand. There was pressures put on by you name it, right? But the North Star for me, and the North Star, I think, for any public servant should be, especially the county attorney's office, what are the facts? What is the law? And then when we put them together, the Ministry of Justice, what is the right thing to do? And it doesn't mean what is the thing to do that gets me out of the papers and no one's mad at me anymore. That doesn't mean, okay, if I do this, then I'm not going to get elected again. No, you do the right thing, as long as the law and the facts call for it, right? And so some of those decisions are really tough. I've had to stand in front of cameras and talk about those decisions. I've had to face county commissioners and city council members and victims or subjects' families, right? Those are really important decisions to make. The policy decisions that we make in our office right now, some of those are important decisions. So for me, every single day, it happens. I would also argue there are smaller decisions that are still so important to people, right? There might have been a departure in a sentence, so someone goes to prison for less than they were supposed to according to the guideline sentence. A newspaper article reporter might want to know why. And I have to tell you, they have every right to ask that, right? And they're owed an answer, by the way. They are, because the public is owed an answer, right? The victim's family might say, what's going on here? They're owed an answer. The court might say, why are you adding more charges in this case, Mr. Nguyen? Or the opposite is true. Why are you letting someone plead to a lesser count, right? Those decisions and questions and answers happen all single day because I'm a manager in the second largest prosecutor's office in this state. So I'm very used to thinking about what the responsibility is to the people asking those questions, and also very thoughtful about the decisions that we make on the front end on what's going to happen on the back end. Right? I mean, that is just a function of being a prosecutor in a large office and a supervisor at that. So that's what is drawing me to this work. I think the community right now, more than ever, needs experienced leadership. Like truly, if you're going to build a house, Terry, you should hire somebody who knows how to build homes.
Well, right now I need someone who can work on the sewer.
Well, that main line is about $10,000. It gets very expensive.
Yeah.
It's happened to me before, and I tell you, that's a big hit.
So I thought maybe to close things out, we could circle back to your immigrant experience that we talked about. I mean, it's just yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, I'm losing track of the days, but Mary Moriarty and Keith Ellison are suing the federal government, and these are just strange times. So I'm just curious if you think they're taking the right approach, if you would do the same thing, and sort of maybe how your own experience as an immigrant has made you feel about what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think that is such a poignant question. I came here, like I said, as a refugee. I'm a citizen. I came through the naturalization process, right? We became citizens. My mom's a citizen, things of that nature. I right now drive around with my naturalization certificate because I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And my kids need to see me again. I'm a prior police officer who was sworn to defend our Constitution. I'm a prosecutor who has given his whole life to this work. And yet I am driving around with my naturalization certificate.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary. That's a sign of our times.
I think Mayor Herr had the same thing.
Oh,
kind of said the same thing.
Did she say that? Because I wouldn't doubt it. Because right now, regardless of our positions, right, we're all seen as maybe our status is in question.
Yeah.
Right. But what I would say is that we have such good cops who want to do the right thing, who are trained properly, who have a badge, who have their badge number, who have their names. They never cover their faces. They are trained so well. Mm-hmm. I went through the post academy. I understand what the police officer standards and training is. I understand that. I know what continuing education for officers are. I am well plugged into almost all of our law enforcement departments. We have such good cops who follow protocol, who are taught to de-escalate, who are taught to treat people well, but also have to use force when it's necessary. Right now, between our largest departments, right, Minneapolis PD and St. Paul, mm-hmm. the numbers combined are much less than the 2,000 ICE officers that are here.
Yeah, I mean,
if you think about
all of Hennepin County has something like 1,500 officers.
Right. So if you think about that, our well-qualified, licensed police officers who have good training, and I think who approach a traffic stop with the highest standards. ICE is outnumbering our officers. And these officers still have to go home and go to bed and wake up tomorrow. They still got to go to court and testify in cases where they might have seen a young girl the night before have to live one of her worst moments of her life by her abuser. And they still got to go to court. It's not like even if we could mobilize all of our licensed officers immediately, they still need to rest.
Yeah.
And they still need to go to court and testify and other things. I think it has caused our community to be very unsafe, to allow to have so many ICE agents in our community who do not have the same standards that we do.
Yeah.
Who do not approach the same sort of situation completely exposed so we can see who they are with their names and everything, who treat people with dignity and respect. It would be, I think, very disingenuous for me to say that that the way that the ICE agents are behaving is appropriate.
Right.
It is absolutely not. And it's making officers unsafe. It's making our officers unsafe. It's making our people unsafe. I mean, Mrs. Good's killing happened 6 blocks from my house. It's my neighborhood. It didn't, for a split second, Honda Pilot, mother, her race, all those things, I thought, oh my God, did my kids not have a mom anymore? I mean, it was that, we drive those streets, bringing our children to school. So I think it's a real problem, Terry. And you know, I'm going to leave the lawsuits and all that to the Attorney General and those people who are tasked with that work. But on a personal level, on a professional level, every single one of our people that cross through Hennepin County deserve due process, right? And they deserve to be safe, right? And I'm not sitting here telling you, I'm not talking about immigration reform and all of this. I'm just saying that people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect and due process. The very least we can provide our people, and I mean anybody in this county, is due process of law.
Well, it's definitely not happening in many of those cases. And, you know, you talked about going through the police academy, and I heard, I'm assuming this is true, that a lot of these ICE people are only getting 47 days of training, which is set because Trump's the 47th president, which just seems insane. How many weeks or days does a normal police officer get trained?
Yeah, so the post standards and training, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's on their website, but there's a whole academy that you need to process through. And then after that, then you have to have a practical part of training as well. So so there's the academic part, weeks and weeks of the academics, so Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, due process, constitutional law, things of that nature, right? And then after that, you have the practical part, so how to operate a motor vehicle, like a squad car, how to use mace, how to use the certain types of tools that are at their discretion, but how to de-escalate, right? There's scenario training, there's all sorts of things. And that's even before you're employed by a law enforcement agency. Once you're employed by a law enforcement agency, now you got to go through the written test, you got to interview, and if you're lucky enough to be one of the finalists, right, then you have to go through a psychological exam, right, held by an independent, right, psychologist, right? And then if you pass that with what we call the psych test, then you might be offered employment. And then if you're offered employment, you go through what we call the FTO phase, field training phase. That's phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 is you're sitting in the passenger seat, and the officer who's training you is in full uniform, right? And you're not necessarily in uniform yet. Some departments do it differently, but that's the case. And eventually, if you pass these phases, then you're in the driver's seat. And by the end of it, it's called the shadow phase, where the officer who's training you is completely dressed like you, looks like a civilian ride-along. You're now fully uniformed, and so the citizens go to you. Everyone sees you as the officer, right? And if you pass shadow phase, then are you able to be alone in a squad car, right? And even then, all the way up to a year, you can be fired at will. So we take our training of our law enforcement so very, very seriously, right? And then when they do things that are wrong, there are internal affairs officers that deal with that address that. And then we have ongoing license and training that's required by the post board. Contrast that to ICE.
Yeah.
That's
a different
It's
world.
completely a different world.
Yeah.
And I would say this. Our law enforcement go home, they sleep in Hennepin County. Most of them, I mean, if we just happen to imagine, they drink Hennepin County's water. They go to Hennepin County churches, whatever their religion might be. Their kids go to Hennepin County schools. They drive Hennepin County schools or like roads. They pay taxes. They have a responsibility to the community that they actually live in. These ICE agents are here and then they're gone.
Yeah.
There's no responsibility to our safety. I am so worried right now. Not only for refugees, but I am one. I see the impact on us. I'm worried also for the men and women that wear the badge, because it's becoming unsafe for them. I'm worried for the school teachers, right? Who can't go to their schools. Minneapolis schools were closed, My kids were at home because there was no school, right?
Mhm.
I'm worried for their livelihood. I'm worried that they're worried about their kids who aren't coming to school, who might be afraid to go to school because maybe they're going to get snatched up. I'm worried for doctors. I'm worried for all of this, right?
Mhm.
I'm worried for journalism, people like you, right? And who might feel like, wow, I should be out there, documenting and showing the voice of what's happening, but they're so scared that they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now it is not okay, and yeah, I as a person who lives in Minneapolis, I'm terrified of it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to, wind things up here and make sure that I give you a chance if there's any points or questions that we didn't cover today that you wanted to touch on before we end it.
Sure. I want to thank the people that have endorsed me so far, and that's Attorney Keith Ellison. That's also Sheriff DeWanna Witt. That's the Mayor of Minnetonka, the Mayor of Maple Grove, the Mayor of Eden Prairie, and the Mayor of Edina. And I want to thank all those people who are supporting this race. Terry, I'm a really hard worker. I'm a huge public servant. I never thought I would go to bed and wake up and want to be, chancellor, king, emperor, whatever it is. The reason why I'm running for this office is because I love this community, and I want to offer a person who, we've covered it all, but a person who comes from where I come from, who understands what it's like for black and brown people, right? But who also understands what it's like for marginally poor white folks. Because I was a poor kid digging through couch cushions in a trailer park asking my mom, which bills are we paying this month and which ones are we not? Mm-hmm. Also, does this food expire and can we still eat it? Or is this Best Buy date, right? Mm-hmm. All those margins of society are really important in terms of having a voice at the table. And I am that voice with that experience. I also know how to prosecute a case and run a prosecutor's office. I think right now more than ever, we owe a responsibility to Hennepin County and its citizens, all of its citizens, all of its community, for a person to step up and do the job. That's why I'm running. I'm not running because, Nguyen has to be the county attorney. I'm running because, back to where I'm going to end where I began, is America gave me all of its fruits. I think its labor ought to be me stepping up and putting myself out there to do a job that I think, quite frankly, is absolutely challenging to do.
It's absolutely a tough one. If people want to find out more about you, what's your website? How can they learn? Yeah,
sure. So it's How, H-A-O, and the number 4, Hennepin. So it's How for Hennepin. And my first name is H-A-O, and the last name is Nguyen, and I'm running for county attorney. I really am asking for people's help in terms of their vote. The help for a caucus on February 3rd.
February 3rd, yeah.
Also help for the DFL endorsement. But vote at the primary and vote in the November election. That's why I'm stepping forward, and I just really thank you for your time.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's really great to hear your perspective.
Yeah, thank you, sir.